The coffee machine hissed like a dying snake as Emma Torres wiped down the counter for the third time in 10 minutes. Her reflection in the chrome espresso machine showed what 4 hours of sleep looked like. Dark circles under brown eyes, hair pulled into a bun that had given up halfway through her shift, and the kind of exhaustion that lived in your bones. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Northwestern Memorial's billing department. She didn't need to open it to know what it said. The number just kept getting bigger, and her sister's condition just kept getting worse. "Emma, Table 6 needs their order," called Marcus from the register, pulling her back to the present moment and the reality of her current life. She grabbed the tray, 2 lattes, 1 cappuccino, a chai tea, and navigated through the cramped coffee shop that smelled of burned beans and unrealized dreams. The October wind rattled the windows of the small Chicago storefront, promising an early winter. Table 6 was occupied by a woman in a business suit who didn't look up from her laptop when Emma set down her order. "No, please. No, thank you." Just the assumption that service was invisible. Emma had learned not to take it personally anymore. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. 3 years ago, she'd had her own practice, small but growing. Pediatric occupational therapy with a focus on sensory processing disorders. She'd loved every minute of it, the breakthroughs, the progress, watching kids who couldn't tolerate touch learn to hug their parents. Then her business partner had embezzled everything, leaving Emma with nothing but debt, and a sister whose medical bills demanded every penny she could scrape together. "Emma," Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts again. "Some guy's asking for you at the counter." Her stomach dropped. Debt collectors had started showing up in person lately. She rounded the corner, preparing her practice speech about payment plans, and stopped short. The man at the counter wasn't a debt collector. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that caught the light. Everything about him screamed money and danger in equal measure. The way he stood like he owned whatever space he occupied, the expensive watch on his wrist. The 2 men flanking him who were clearly security despite their attempts to blend in. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Dark, calculating, and currently studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken for reasons she couldn't name. "Emma Torres?" His voice was smooth, accented with something European she couldn't quite place. "Who's asking?" She kept the counter between them, her hand instinctively moving toward her phone. "My name is Alessandro Marcelli. I need to discuss a business opportunity that might benefit us both." The name registered immediately. Everyone in Chicago knew the Marcelli family, even if they pretended not to. They owned half the city's construction contracts, restaurants that never seemed to close, and warehouses that no one ever went near. The kind of family that made the news when politicians needed to look tough on organized crime. "I'm not interested in any business with you," Emma said, keeping her voice steady despite the way her hands wanted to shake. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, respect, maybe, or surprise that someone would refuse him so directly. "You haven't heard what I'm offering." "Doesn't matter. I don't work for people like you. People like me." He repeated the phrase as if tasting it, finding it bitter. "You think you know what kind of person I am. I know enough." One of his security guards shifted, but Alessandro raised a hand slightly, stopping whatever intervention the man had planned. The gesture was economical, practiced, the kind of control that came from years of command. "My son," Alessandro said, his voice dropping lower, forcing Emma to lean in slightly to hear. Over the coffee shop's ambient noise, "He's 7 years old. He's blind, and he hasn't spoken in 3 years." Emma's professional instincts warred with her survival instincts. She'd specialized in exactly this kind of case, children with trauma-related disorders, sensory processing issues, selective mutism. But getting involved with the Marcelli family was asking for trouble she couldn't afford. "There are excellent therapists at Children's Memorial. I can give you some names. We've been to every specialist in Chicago, Boston, New York, Switzerland." Alessandro's control cracked just slightly, revealing the desperate father beneath the dangerous exterior. 27 specialists in 3 years. None of them lasted more than 2 months. Most couldn't handle him. The rest couldn't handle me. "Then what makes you think I'm different?" He pulled out his phone, showed her a video. A small boy sitting in what looked like a palatial bedroom, rocking back and forth, hands pressed, over his ears. Someone off camera was trying to approach, speaking in soothing tones, but the boy's rocking intensified. Then, suddenly, He screamed a sound of such pure anguish that it cut through Emma like a blade. The video ended. Alessandro's jaw was tight, his knuckles white where he gripped the phone. "That's every day," he said quietly. "Sometimes multiple times a day. The specialists give me medications, routines, protocols. Nothing works. He's getting worse, not better." Emma's professional curiosity was fully engaged now, despite her better judgment. What happened? How did he lose his sight? Alessandro's expression went cold, dangerous. That's not relevant to his treatment. Everything is relevant to treatment, Mr. Marcelli. Trauma doesn't exist in isolation. If you want help, you need to be honest with me. They stared at each other across the counter, the coffee shop noises fading into background static. Emma could feel Marcus watching nervously from the register, probably wondering if he should call the police. "His mother was killed," Alessandro finally said, each word carefully controlled. "He was in the room. The trauma. The doctors say it triggered a psychogenic condition. The blindness is real, but it's neurological, not physical. His eyes work. His brain won't process what they see." Emma's breath caught. Psychogenic blindness was rare, devastating, and notoriously difficult to treat. It meant Dante's mind had literally shut down his vision to protect him from processing what he'd witnessed. "I can't help you," she said, but the words came out weaker than she intended. $50,000 a month. Emma's world tilted. "What?" "That's what I'll pay you to work with my son. Private suite in my home, all expenses covered, full medical benefits for you and your family." Alessandro's eyes bored into hers. "I know about your sister's condition. Cystic fibrosis, correct? The treatments at Northwestern Memorial. I can arrange for her to be moved to a private facility. The best pulmonologists in the country. The offer hung between them like a physical thing. $50,000 a month. Her sister getting proper care instead of the piecemeal treatment their insurance barely covered. No more working 3 jobs. No more lying awake, calculating which bills to pay and which to let go to collections. How do you know about my sister?" "I make it my business to know things." Alessandro slid a business card across the counter. "Heavy stock, minimalist design, just a name and phone number. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I'll find someone else." He turned to leave, his security detail moving with practiced coordination. "Wait," Emma heard herself say. "I need to meet him first. Your son. I won't commit to anything without seeing if we can even work together." Alessandro paused, turned back. Something that might have been approval crossed his features. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My driver will pick you up from your apartment. I didn't tell you where I live." "I know." He pushed through the door, leaving Emma standing behind the counter with a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Marcus appeared at her elbow. "Emma, please tell me, you're not actually considering working for Alessandro Marcelli." She stared at the card, thinking about her sister's labored breathing, about the bills piling up, about the little boy in that video whose screams had sounded like her own professional failures given voice. "I don't know," she admitted. "I really don't know." The black Mercedes arrived exactly at 10, as promised. Emma had spent the previous evening researching everything she could find about Alessandro Marcelli and his son. The official story: Alessandro's wife, Isabella, had died in a home invasion 3 years ago. Their son Dante had been traumatized by witnessing the attack and subsequently lost his sight due to psychological trauma. Alessandro, devastated by his wife's death, had become increasingly reclusive, focusing on his business empire and his son's care. The unofficial story, pieced together from true crime forums and gossip sites: Isabella Marcelli had been assassinated by a rival organization. The home invasion was a professional hit. Dante had hidden in a closet and watched through the slats as his mother bled out on their kitchen floor. The men who killed her had been searching for him too, but Isabella had died protecting her son's hiding place. Alessandro had systematically destroyed the organization responsible over the following 6 months. The kind of destruction that left no survivors to testify, no evidence to prosecute, just a rival family that simply ceased to exist. Emma had barely slept. Now she stood in front of her apartment building, watching the Mercedes idle at the curb, its tinted windows revealing nothing. The driver who emerged was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the economy of motion that suggested military training. "Miss Torres?" He opened the rear door without waiting for confirmation. The interior smelled of leather and money. Emma settled into seats more comfortable than her own bed and tried not to think about what she was doing. They drove north, into neighborhoods where the houses had gates and the gates had guards. The Marcelli estate sat on the lake, its stone facade and manicured grounds looking like something transplanted from Europe. Security cameras tracked their approach from multiple angles. The driver pulled up to the main entrance, where Alessandro waited. He'd traded yesterday's suit for dark jeans and a black sweater, but somehow still managed to look dangerous. The casual clothes revealed more of his physical presence, broad shoulders, the kind of build that came from regular training, not gym vanity. "Thank you for coming," he said, as Emma exited the car. His tone was more respectful than yesterday, as if her willingness to show up had earned something. "I haven't agreed to anything," Emma reminded him, following him up marble steps. "This is just a consultation." "Understood." The interior of the mansion was stunning, soaring ceilings, artwork that probably belonged in museums, floors so polished they reflected the crystal chandeliers overhead. But Emma noticed other details too. The bulletproof glass in the windows, the security panels concealed behind paintings, the way certain hallways dead-ended in reinforced doors. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. "Dante's wing is on the second floor," Alessandro explained as they climbed a sweeping staircase. "He has a bedroom, bathroom, therapy room, and playroom. We keep the environment controlled: temperature, lighting, sound. Any deviation triggers episodes." "Who decided on this setup?" "The specialists. Dr. Brennan from Boston Children's designed the protocols we follow." Emma filed that away. Dr. Brennan was respected but old school, the type who believed in rigid structure over flexibility. It might work for some kids, but children with trauma needed something different. They reached a heavy oak door. Alessandro paused with his hand on the handle. "A few rules before we go in. Don't touch him without warning. Don't make sudden loud noises. Don't try to force interaction. And most importantly," his eyes locked with hers, intensity crackling between them, "don't pity him. He's not broken. He's surviving." The last statement carried weight that suggested Alessandro was talking about more than just his son. He opened the door. The room beyond was dim, curtains drawn despite the beautiful October morning outside. It smelled clinical, like a hospital room, antiseptic and artificial. The temperature was precisely controlled, probably 72 degrees exactly. In the center of the room, sitting on a cushioned mat, was a small boy with dark curls and his father's striking features. Dante Marcelli wore noise-canceling headphones and had his hands pressed flat against the mat, fingers spread wide. He rocked slightly, a self-soothing motion Emma recognized from hundreds of case studies. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Alessandro started to speak, but Emma raised a hand, stopping him. She'd already spotted the first problem. This environment was wrong. Too controlled, too sterile, too focused on preventing distress rather than helping Dante process and integrate sensory information. Instead of approaching Dante directly, Emma sat down on the floor about 10 feet away from him. She didn't speak, didn't try to get his attention. She just sat, making herself a presence in his environment without demands or expectations. Alessandro watched from the doorway, confusion evident in his posture. After several minutes, Dante's rocking slowed slightly. His head tilted, as if listening for something beyond what his ears could hear. Emma had seen this before. Children with psychogenic blindness often developed heightened sensitivity to other environmental cues. Air currents, vibrations, the electromagnetic fields from electronic devices. She slowly, deliberately, pulled a small object from her pocket. It was a therapy tool she'd kept from her practice days. A smooth stone that had been sitting in a rock tumbler for weeks until its surface was perfectly uniform, temperature neutral, satisfying to touch. Emma rolled it between her palms, creating a soft, rhythmic sound. Dante's rocking stopped completely. His head turned toward her, sightless eyes pointing in her general direction. His hands lifted from the mat, hovering in the air as if reaching for something he couldn't name. Alessandro took a sharp breath behind her, but Emma stayed focused on Dante. She rolled the stone a few more times, then gently set it on the floor between them. Not close enough for Dante to reach without effort, but within his potential range if he chose to explore. For almost 5 minutes, nothing happened. Emma waited, patient, making no demands. This was the crucial moment. Would Dante's curiosity overcome his fear of the unknown? Then, slowly, Dante's hand extended. His fingers stretched toward where the sound had come from. Searching. When he found the stone, his entire body relaxed. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, brought it close to his face to examine it with senses other than sight. A small sound escaped him. Not a word, but a vocalization. Interest, maybe even pleasure. Alessandro was at Emma's side in seconds, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the controlled space. "He hasn't voluntarily explored a new object in 6 months," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "How did you—" "He's not refusing to interact with the world," Emma interrupted quietly, still watching Dante explore the stone. "He's protecting himself from it. There's a difference." Dante's fingers traced the stone's smooth surface over and over, finding comfort in its predictability. Emma recognized the behavior he was, organizing sensory information, creating a mental model of an object that felt safe because it held no surprises. "Everything in this room is trying to prevent his distress," Emma continued, keeping her voice low and even. "But distress is part of processing trauma. You can't heal by avoiding pain. You can only heal by learning that pain doesn't last forever." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "You're saying I've been doing everything wrong." "I'm saying you've been doing what you were told by people who don't understand complex trauma." Emma finally turned to look at him, finding his face closer than she'd expected. "Your specialists are treating symptoms. But Dante doesn't need his symptoms managed. He needs to feel safe enough to face what happened to him. And you think you can do that, where 27 others failed?" The challenge in his voice was clear, but so was the desperate hope underneath it. Emma looked back at Dante, who was still absorbed in his exploration of the stone. "I think Dante will do it himself, if someone gives him the right tools and the space to try. But it won't be fast, it won't be easy, and there will be setbacks that feel like failure. I don't care how long it takes." "You say that now. But when he's screaming at 3 a.m., because we've pushed too hard that day, when he regresses after a breakthrough, when the progress is so slow you can't see it happening, that's when most people give up." Alessandro's hand suddenly covered hers where it rested on the floor, his touch warm and solid. The gesture was unexpected, intimate, in a way that had nothing to do with romance, and everything to do with one person reaching for an anchor in a storm. "I watched my wife die protecting our son," he said, his voice barely audible. "I've spent 3 years living in a hell where I can provide him everything except what he needs most. I won't give up on him. Not ever." The raw honesty in his words pierced something in Emma's carefully constructed defenses. This wasn't just a job offer from a dangerous man. This was a father breaking under the weight of love and helplessness. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll do it. 3-month trial. If I can't help him by then, I walk away." Alessandro's hand tightened on hers for just a moment before he pulled back. 3 months. "But there are things you need to understand about living here." A sudden crash from across the room cut him off. Dante had thrown the stone, hard, and it had shattered a lamp on the far side of the room. The boy was on his feet now, hands over his ears, beginning to rock violently. "Damn it," Alessandro muttered, moving toward his son. The noise triggered. "Wait," Emma stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Let me—" She approached Dante differently this time, staying low to the ground, making herself smaller and less threatening. As she got closer, she began to hum not a song, just a simple, repetitive pattern of notes, something predictable, something that could cut through the chaos of his sensory overload. Dante's rocking slowed. His hands pressed harder against his ears, but his body was listening to the pattern Emma created. She settled on the floor next to him, still humming, and after a moment, she began to rock too, matching his rhythm exactly, becoming an echo of his movement. Occupational Therapy 101. Meet the client where they are, then guide them to where they need to be. Gradually, as minutes passed, Emma slowed her rocking. Dante's movements slowed with hers, as if her presence was providing the regulation his overwhelmed nervous system couldn't create on its own. When Dante finally lowered his hands from his ears, Emma placed her hand flat on the floor between them and tapped a simple rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Dante's hand moved to mirror hers on the floor. He tapped the same rhythm, his timing imperfect but his intent clear. He was communicating, using the only language that felt safe right now. Emma changed the pattern. Tap, tap, pause, tap, pause. Dante copied it. They continued like that for several minutes, creating a conversation made of rhythm and touch, until Dante's breathing had completely evened out and the tension had drained from his small body. When Emma finally looked up, Alessandro was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Wonder, maybe. Or fear. Possibly both. How did you do that? He asked. I didn't do anything. Dante did it all himself. He just needed someone who was willing to speak his language, instead of forcing him to speak theirs. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, watching his son, who had now settled back onto his mat and was tracing patterns on the floor with his fingers calm, regulated, present in a way he clearly hadn't been before. When can you start? He finally asked. Emma thought about her sister, her jobs, her apartment. I need a week to arrange things, and I wanted in writing medical care for my sister, regardless of what happens with Dante's treatment. That's non-negotiable. Done. Alessandro pulled out his phone. My lawyer will have contracts ready by tomorrow. As they walked back toward the main floor, Emma felt the weight of what she'd agreed to settling over her shoulders. She was about to move into the home of one of Chicago's most dangerous men, to work with a traumatized child whose recovery might not be possible, and to wade into waters that could drown her. But when she thought of Dante's small hand tapping out rhythms on the floor, reaching for connection despite everything he'd lost, she knew she couldn't walk away. Some battles were worth the risk. The East Wing suite that would become Emma's home was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water stretching endlessly toward a horizon that seemed impossibly far away. The bedroom alone could have fit 3 of her old living rooms, furnished with pieces that looked like they belonged in design magazines. But it was the adjoining workspace that stopped her breath. Someone, Alessandro, she assumed, had equipped it with every piece of occupational therapy equipment she could have dreamed of. Sensory integration tools, adaptive technology, specialized lighting systems, therapeutic swings and climbing structures. Tens of thousands of dollars worth of resources that most therapists never had access to. If you need anything else, tell me, Alessandro said from the doorway. He'd given her the tour himself, his security detail maintaining a respectful distance. Money isn't a concern. Dante's recovery is... Emma ran her hand over a Therafin-weighted compression vest, top-of-the-line equipment she'd only ever read about. This is... incredible. But Alessandro, you need to understand this equipment doesn't guarantee results. Trauma recovery isn't something you can buy. I know. He stepped further into the room, his presence somehow making the spacious area feel smaller. But I can buy you the tools to try. The rest is up to you and Dante. Over the next week, Emma systematically dismantled the rigid routines that had governed Dante's life. The sterile, controlled environment was replaced with carefully calibrated chaos, different textures, varying temperatures, controlled introduction of natural sounds and light. The household staff watched with barely concealed skepticism. Maria, the head housekeeper who'd been with the family since Dante's birth, was particularly resistant to the changes. The boy needs structure, she insisted as Emma opened the curtains in Dante's room for the first time in months, letting October sunlight stream across the floor. Dr. Brennan was very specific. Doctor, Brennan isn't here anymore, Emma replied gently but firmly, and structure isn't the same as rigidity. Dante needs predictability, yes, but he also needs variety. His brain is desperately trying to process a world it's shut out. We need to give it safe ways to practice. The first major breakthrough came on Emma's 5th day. She'd been working with Dante on tactile exploration, introducing objects with increasingly complex textures. When she presented him with a piece of bark from the estate's oak tree, rough and irregular and alive with detail, Dante's hands stilled. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he spoke. Outside, he whispered, the single word barely audible. Mama, outside. Emma's heart clenched. She looked up to find Alessandro standing in the doorway, his face a mask of shock. He'd been doing that lately, appearing at unexpected moments, watching their sessions from a distance as if afraid to hope too much. You remember being outside with your mama? Emma asked softly, keeping her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Dante nodded, his small fingers continuing to trace the bark's ridges. Garden, she sang. Birds sang. It was the most he'd spoken since the trauma. Alessandro moved into the room like a man in a dream, dropping to his knees beside his son. Emma saw his hand reaching out, desperate to touch, to connect, but stopping just short of contact, respecting the boundaries his son needed. The garden is still there, Alessandro said, his voice rough. Would you like to go there? With Emma? Dante's rocking increased, anxiety spiking at the suggestion of change. But his hands didn't leave the bark. He was considering it, weighing fear against desire. "We could just sit by the window that looks at the garden," Emma suggested. "Not go outside, just be closer to where the birds are." After a long moment, Dante nodded. The window seat in the library became their new therapy space. Emma positioned cushions and weighted blankets to create a nest-like environment where Dante could feel secure while slowly exposing himself to the sounds and smells of the garden below. She'd open the window just a crack, letting in the October breeze and the distant sound of birds. Alessandro often joined them, at first watching from a distance, then gradually moving closer as Dante became comfortable with the new routine. Emma found herself increasingly aware of his presence, the way he moved with predatory grace despite his size, the careful control he maintained over every expression, the rare moments when his guard dropped, and she glimpsed the grief that lived beneath his dangerous exterior. "You're good with him," Alessandro observed one afternoon after Dante had fallen asleep in his nest of cushions, exhausted from the sensory work they'd been doing. "Better than good. You understand him in a way I've never been able to." Emma arranged a blanket over Dante's small form, tucking it carefully around him. "I understand what it's like to have your world destroyed and not know how to rebuild it. Maybe that helps." "Your practice," Alessandro said, and it wasn't a question. He'd clearly done his research. "Your partner stole everything." "Not everything. He couldn't steal what I knew, what I'd learned. That's mine, regardless of what happened." Emma moved away from the sleeping child, settling into one of the library's leather chairs. Alessandro took the one across from her, and for the first time, they were simply two people talking, not employer and employee. "Do you regret it? Becoming a therapist instead of something safer?" Emma considered the question. "Every day after my practice failed, I regretted it. Every time I couldn't afford my sister's medications, every time a bill collector called. But then I'd remember the kids I'd helped, the families I'd supported through their worst moments. And I'd realize I couldn't regret something that mattered that much, even if it cost me everything." Alessandro studied her with those dark, intense eyes. "That's foolish, probably. It's also remarkably brave." The compliment landed between them like something physical, creating a charge in the air that Emma didn't know how to navigate. Before she could respond, Dante stirred, whimpering in his sleep. Emma moved immediately, settling beside him and beginning to hum the simple pattern that had become their signal for safety. Dante's whimpers faded, his small body relaxing back into sleep. When she looked up, Alessandro was watching her with an expression that made her breath catch hunger and longing, and something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. The days fell into a rhythm, mornings with Dante, afternoons reviewing progress and planning next steps, evenings when Alessandro would join them for dinner. The household gradually accepted Emma's presence, though she caught whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, noticed the way security personnel tracked her movements. She was living in a gilded cage, and the bars were becoming more visible every day. "There are things you need to know," Alessandro told her one evening after Dante had been put to bed. They were in his private study, a room she'd been summoned to with unusual formality. "About why you're really here, and what threats still exist." Emma's stomach tightened. She'd known this conversation was coming, but that didn't make it easier. "The men who killed your wife. They're not all gone, are they?" Alessandro's expression went cold, dangerous. "Most of them are. The Volkov family was decimated after Isabella's death. But Anton Volkov, the eldest son, survived. He's been rebuilding in the shadows for 3 years, and my intelligence suggests he's nearly ready to make his move. And Dante is the target. Dante was always the target. Isabella's death was meant to draw me out, make me careless with grief. When that failed, they went underground. Now they're patient, waiting for the perfect moment to finish what they started." Emma thought of the security, the cameras, the armed men who patrolled the grounds. "You've been preparing for them, every day for 3 years. Alessandro poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter on his desk, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. But Dante's condition made him vulnerable. A child who can't see threats, can't communicate danger, can't run if necessary. Every specialist I hired was vetted, monitored, kept at a distance to ensure they couldn't be compromised. But you're trusting me. You're different." He met her eyes over the rim of his glass. "You actually care about Dante, not just the money I'm paying you. That kind of authenticity can't be faked. And more importantly, his voice dropped lower. You're helping him in ways that might save his life if the Volkovs come. The weight of that responsibility settled over Emma like a physical thing. She wasn't just treating trauma. She was preparing a child to survive another attack. What happens if they come while I'm here? Then you follow the protocols my head of security will teach you. There's a safe room behind the bookcase in Dante's bedroom. You get him there, you lock it down. And you wait until I or my men give the all clear. Alessandro's hand tightened around his glass. But Emma, if it comes to that, if you're in that room with my son and something happens to me, there are instructions, resources, people who will help you disappear with him. Alessandro, I need to know he'll survive, even if I don't. Can you promise me that? The naked vulnerability in his voice, the way he was trusting her with his child's life, cracked something open in Emma's chest. This wasn't the dangerous mob boss the world feared. This was a father who'd already lost everything once and couldn't survive losing it again. I promise, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The security training began the next morning. Alessandro's head of security, a former Marine named Marcus Chen, was thorough and patient, teaching Emma everything from basic self-defense to how to operate the mansion's panic systems. The most important thing is to not be a hero, Marcus explained as they practiced escape routes through the mansion's hidden passages. Your job is to protect Dante, not engage threats. Get him secure, stay quiet, let us handle the rest. But Emma noticed that Marcus also taught her how to handle a weapon, how to recognize different types of threats, how to assess tactical situations. Alessandro might want her to hide with Dante, but his security team was preparing her for scenarios where hiding wouldn't be enough. The training sessions left her exhausted, but Dante's continued progress energized her. He was speaking more still, mostly single words, but with increasing frequency. His tolerance for sensory input was expanding. Most remarkably, he'd begun to show interest in his environment beyond just self-soothing activities. Emma, he said one afternoon, his hand reaching toward where she sat beside him. Find. It was their newest game. Emma would place an object somewhere in his environment, and Dante would use his other senses to locate it. The exercise was building his spatial awareness, teaching his brain to construct models of the world without visual input. What am I finding today? She asked. Dante's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, the first one Emma had ever seen from him. Papa. Alessandro, who'd been working at his desk in the corner of the therapy room, looked up in surprise. In the weeks since Emma had arrived, he'd maintained careful distance during therapy sessions, not wanting his presence to disrupt Dante's progress. You want to play find with your papa? Emma asked gently. Dante nodded, then added another word. Together, Emma's throat tightened with emotion. This was huge, Dante actively seeking interaction with his father, wanting to include Alessandro in his world. Alessandro set aside his work and came to kneel beside them. What do you want me to find, Piccolo? Dante thought for a moment, then reached for Emma's hand, and Alessandro's, placing to them together. His small hands patted theirs once, then retreated. Each other, Emma translated softly. He wants us to find each other. The exercise was simple. Alessandro and Emma would move to different parts of the room, and Dante would use sound cues to guide them back together. But the metaphor wasn't lost on either adult. Dante was building a family structure in his mind, creating connections that his trauma had severed. As the afternoon progressed and the game continued, Emma found herself increasingly aware of Alessandro's proximity each time they reunited near Dante. The way his hand would steady her elbow, the careful distance he maintained that somehow felt more intimate than contact would have been, the moments when their eyes met and understanding passed between them without words. They were becoming something, the three of them. Something fragile and precious that neither adult wanted to acknowledge for fear of breaking it. That night, Emma's sister Sophia called via video chat, her face brighter than Emma had seen it in years. Emma, the new treatment is working, Sophia said, her voice full of energy that hadn't been there before. Doctor, Morrison says my lung function has improved 15% in just 3 weeks. I can breathe, Emma. I can actually breathe without it hurting. Emma's eyes filled with tears. That's incredible, Soph. I'm so proud of you. It's because of you. Because of whatever deal you made to get me into this program. Sophia's expression turned serious. I know you're working for dangerous people, Em. But thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to live. After the call ended, Emma sat in her room staring out at the dark lake, trying to reconcile the good her decision was doing with the risks she was taking. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The sound of a knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. Alessandro stood in the hallway, still dressed in the suit he'd worn for whatever business had called him away that evening. But his tie was gone, his collar unbuttoned, and there was something raw in his expression. "Is everything all right?" Emma asked, immediately concerned. "Sophia's improvement that makes you happy?" It wasn't a question, but Emma nodded anyway. "She's everything to me. Seeing her getting better, knowing she has a future. It makes all of this worth it." "Good." Alessandro leaned against the doorframe, and Emma noticed the way tension lined his shoulders. "Because I need you to understand something. The Volkovs, my sources say they're moving faster than anticipated. What I thought would be months away might be weeks, days, even." Fear spiked through Emma's system. "Are we in immediate danger?" "No, not yet. But Emma." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If you want to leave, if you want to take your sister and disappear before this gets worse, I'll arrange it. New identities, security, enough money to ensure you're both taken care of for life. Just say the word." Emma thought of Dante sleeping down, the hall, of the progress they'd made, of the trust that small boy had placed in her. She thought of Alessandro, carrying the weight of protecting his son while knowing enemies circled in the darkness. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "Dante needs consistency right now. Abandoning him would undo everything we've built. And besides," she met Alessandro's eyes directly, "I made you a promise. I keep my promises." Something flickered across Alessandro's face, relief, gratitude, and something hotter that made Emma's pulse quicken. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek in a gesture that was both tender and possessive. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he murmured, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You said that before. I'm still deciding which it is." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Emma knew she should step back, maintain professional boundaries, protect herself from getting more entangled with this complicated, dangerous man. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her hand coming up to rest over his. Alessandro. Whatever she'd been about to say was cut off by the sound of screaming from Dante's room. They broke apart instantly, both running down the hall toward the sound of terror. Dante was in the middle of a nightmare, his small body thrashing in the bed as he screamed words they could barely make out. "No, no, Mama, run, Mama!" Emma reached him first, gathering him into her arms despite his flailing limbs. "Dante, it's Emma. You're safe. You're here with me and your papa." But this was different from his usual episodes. Dante's eyes were open but unseeing, locked in whatever horror his sleeping mind had conjured. His hands clawed at invisible threats, his screams becoming more desperate. Alessandro tried to help, but Dante's reaction was violent, his small fist connecting with his father's jaw before either adult could react. "He's trapped in a flashback," Emma explained, her training kicking in despite her fear. "He's not seeing us. He's seeing the attack." She began the grounding technique they'd been practicing, pressing weighted objects into Dante's hands, speaking in the rhythmic pattern that had become their safety signal. But nothing was working. Dante was too deep in the memory, reliving the worst moment of his life. Then Alessandro began to sing. It was a lullaby in Italian, his voice rough and unpracticed, but filled with so much love that it cut through the panic in the room. Emma recognized it after a moment, Ninna Nana, the same song she'd heard him humming absently when he thought no one was listening. Dante's screaming faded to whimpers, his thrashing slowed. Isabella used to sing that to him. Alessandro explained quietly, still singing between words. "Every night before bed. I stopped after she died because it hurt too much." But the pain in his voice was worth it as Dante's small body finally relaxed, his breathing evening out. His sightless eyes turned toward his father, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Papa," he whispered. "Scared. So scared." "I know, Piccolo. I know." Alessandro gathered his son close, still singing softly. "But you're safe now. Emma and I are here. No one will hurt you." Emma stayed with them as Alessandro held Dante, the three of them creating a unit against the darkness of memory and fear. Eventually, Dante's exhaustion won out and he drifted back to sleep, this time peacefully. Alessandro carried him back to bed, tucking him in with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his dangerous reputation. Emma followed, helping to arrange the weighted blankets that would keep Dante feeling secure through the rest of the night. "Thank you," Alessandro said as they left the room, his voice barely above a whisper. "For knowing what to do. For being here. That's what you're paying me for." "No." He turned to face her in the dimly lit hallway. "What I'm paying you for is occupational therapy and trauma treatment. What you're giving us is so much more than that." Before Emma could respond, before she could analyze or question or protect herself, Alessandro's lips were on hers. The kiss was desperate and tender at once, tasting of fear and hope, and something neither of them was ready to name. Emma kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite every logical reason she should push him away. This was dangerous. This was unprofessional. The sound of footsteps made them break apart. Marcus appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression apologetic but urgent. "Boss, we have a situation." The perimeter cameras picked up movement in the north sector. "Could be nothing, but it could be them," Alessandro finished grimly. He turned to Emma. "Go to your room. Lock the door. If you hear anything at all, you follow the protocols we practiced." "Alessandro, please, Emma. I need to know you're safe so I can focus on keeping Dante safe." She wanted to argue, to insist she could help, but she saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for them, for his son and for her. "Be careful," she said instead. He touched her face once, briefly, then disappeared down the hallway with Marcus, leaving Emma alone with the taste of his kiss still on her lips and fear coiling in her stomach. She didn't go to her room. Instead, she positioned herself outside Dante's door, where she could reach him in seconds if necessary, where she could protect him if Alessandro's enemies finally came for what they'd failed to take 3 years ago. The mansion settled into tense silence around her as security teams mobilized in the darkness below. Emma listened to every creak, every distant sound, her body primed for action while her mind raced through worst-case scenarios. This was what she'd signed up for when she'd agreed to help Dante. Not just treating trauma, but living inside it, becoming part of a family that existed under constant threat. But as she thought of Dante's small hand in hers, of Alessandro's kiss, of the fragile hope they were building together, Emma realized something terrifying. She wouldn't leave even if she could. She was already too far gone. The North Sector alarm turned out to be a false positive deer crossing through the motion sensors, but the incident left everyone on edge. Alessandro doubled security patrols and installed additional monitoring equipment throughout the estate. The fortress became even more fortified. Emma threw herself into Dante's therapy with renewed urgency. If the Volkovs were coming, she needed to prepare him as much as possible. Not just emotionally, but practically. She began incorporating spatial awareness exercises that taught Dante how to navigate quickly through familiar spaces, how to stay quiet when necessary, how to recognize warning signals. "You're training him for war," Maria observed one afternoon, watching as Emma guided Dante through a timed exercise navigating from his room to the safe room behind the bookcase. "I'm training him to survive," Emma corrected. "There's a difference." Dante's progress accelerated with the new focus. His speech became more fluid, moving from single words to short phrases and then full sentences. His spatial awareness improved dramatically. He could navigate the entire second floor without assistance now, using sound echoes and air currents to build mental maps of his environment. But it was his emotional development that struck Emma most profoundly. The boy who had been locked in trauma-induced silence was emerging as someone with personality, preferences, even humor. "Emma smells like coffee," he announced one morning, wrinkling his nose. "Too much coffee." Alessandro, who was reviewing security reports at the breakfast table, looked up with something approaching amusement. "Emma drinks too much coffee because someone keeps her up late with therapy sessions." "I like therapy," Dante replied, reaching for his orange juice with increasing confidence. "Emma makes it fun. Not like the boring doctors." "The boring doctors who tried very hard to help you," Emma reminded him gently, though she couldn't hide her smile. "They smelled like sad," Dante said with the blunt honesty of a child. "You smell like hope." The statement landed like a blow to Emma's chest. She looked up to find Alessandro watching her with an expression that made her breath catch raw emotion barely contained beneath his usual control. Their relationship had shifted after that kiss in the hallway. Nothing overt, nothing that would be obvious to observers. But there were moments, his hand lingering at the small of her back as they walked, her fingers brushing his when they passed objects between them, the way their eyes would meet across rooms and entire conversations would happen in silence. They were falling, both of them, and neither knew how to stop it, or if they even wanted to. "Papa," Dante said, pulling their attention back. "When can I see?" The question asked so simply, with such matter-of-fact expectation, froze both adults. "What do you mean, Piccolo?" Alessandro asked carefully. "Emma says my eyes work, that my brain is what stopped them. So when will my brain let me see again?" Emma exchanged a glance with Alessandro, trying to telegraph caution. They'd discussed Dante's potential for visual recovery, but the timeline was unpredictable. Psychogenic blindness could resolve suddenly or persist for years. Building false hope would be cruel. "Your brain is protecting you," Emma explained, choosing her words carefully. "It shut down your vision because what you saw was too scary to process. It won't let you see again until it knows you're safe enough to handle it." "But I am safe. Papa keeps us safe." Dante's voice carried absolute certainty. "So maybe my brain will figure that out soon." The faith in his father's protection was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Emma saw Alessandro's throat work as he swallowed hard against emotion. "Maybe," Alessandro said roughly. "Maybe it will." But later, when Dante was napping and they were alone in the library, Alessandro's composure cracked. What if he never sees again? He stood at the window overlooking the lake, his back to Emma, shoulders rigid with tension. What if all this work, all this progress, what if his vision never comes back? Emma moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. "Then we continue helping him build a full, rich life without it. Blind doesn't mean broken. Alessandro, Dante is already thriving in ways he wasn't before. Vision would be wonderful, but it's not what defines him." "You don't understand." Alessandro's voice was harsh, angry. "The Volkovs, when they come, if Dante can't see them, can't run effectively." "Stop!" Emma grabbed his arm, forcing him to turn and face her. "You can't let fear of what might happen drive every decision. Dante needs to heal at his own pace, not on a timeline determined by your enemies." "My enemies who want to kill him?" Alessandro's control shattered completely, the fear he'd been containing for weeks finally breaking through. "They murdered Isabella in front of him. They'll do worse if they get another chance. And His voice broke. "I can't lose him, Emma. He's all I have left of her. All I have left of anything good in this world." Emma saw it then, the complete devastation beneath Alessandro's dangerous exterior. This man who commanded fear throughout Chicago was terrified, helpless in the face of a threat he couldn't control through force or money or strategic planning. "You have more than you think," she said softly, her hand coming up to cup his face. "You have Dante's love. You have his trust. You have a son who's fighting his way back to the world because you've given him reasons to." "I have you," Alessandro said, his hand covering hers. "Don't I?" The question hung between them, weighted with everything they'd been avoiding acknowledging. Emma knew the smart answer, the professional answer. She should create distance, maintain boundaries, protect herself from getting more entangled with a life that could destroy her. Instead, she kissed him. This kiss was different from the desperate collision in the hallway. It was a choice, deliberate and clear-eyed. Emma poured everything she couldn't say into it, her fear for him, her growing love for his son, her unwillingness to walk away despite every logical reason she should. Alessandro responded with equal intensity, his arms wrapping around her waist and pulling her close. They came together like people drowning, desperate for air, for connection, for something solid in a world that kept shifting beneath their feet. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "This is dangerous," he murmured, "for both of us." "I know. You could still leave. I would help you." "I'm not leaving." Emma's voice was firm, final. "I love him, Alessandro. I love Dante like he's my own. And you," she hesitated, then pushed through. "Whatever this is between us, it matters. More than safety. More than smart choices." Alessandro's kiss this time was tender, reverent, like he was memorizing her. "Then we face what's coming together," he said against her lips. "All three of us." The moment shattered with the sound of breaking glass from upstairs. They ran toward Dante's room, Emma's heart hammering against her ribs. Security alarms blared throughout the mansion as they burst through the door to find Dante standing in the middle of broken vase shards, his face turned toward the window, body tense with concentration. "Someone's in the garden," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "3 people. Moving wrong. Not gardeners." Alessandro was on his radio immediately, barking orders as security teams mobilized. Emma moved to Dante, checking him for injuries from the broken glass, but he pushed her hands away impatiently. "I heard them," he insisted. "Through the window. Their footsteps are trying to be quiet, but they're too heavy." "Papa, they're coming for us." Marcus burst into the room, weapon drawn. "Boss, we've got confirmed hostile movement. 3 tangos approaching from the garden. Exactly like the kid said." "How the hell did he—" "Dante's hearing has compensated for his vision," Emma explained quickly. "He can process auditory information most people miss. If he says 3 people, there are 3 people." Alessandro's expression went cold, calculating. This was the mob boss Emma had heard about, but never fully seen the man who had systematically destroyed an entire organization in retribution for his wife's murder. "Lock down the house," he ordered Marcus. "Deploy teams to intercept. I want them alive for questioning." His eyes met Emma's. "Get Dante to the safe room. Now." "Papa Dante," started, fear creeping into his voice for the first time. "Do what Emma says, Piccolo. I'll come get you when it's safe. I promise." Alessandro kissed his son's forehead, then Emma's, a gesture of tenderness in the midst of chaos. "Protect him. With my life," Emma promised. She grabbed Dante's hand and ran. Their practiced escape route burned into muscle memory from weeks of drills. Behind the bookcase in Dante's room, the hidden door opened at her touch, revealing the reinforced panic room Alessandro had built for exactly this scenario. The space was surprisingly comfortable, a small bedroom with its own bathroom, supplies for several days, and a wall of monitors showing security feeds from throughout the estate. Emma sealed the door behind them and immediately pulled up the camera feeds, watching as Alessandro's security teams engaged the intruders in the garden. The firefight was brief, professional, and brutal. Within minutes, all 3 hostiles were subdued and being dragged toward the mansion's basement. "Did Papa get hurt?" Dante asked, his sensitive ears probably picking up sounds Emma couldn't hear through the reinforced walls. "No, sweetheart. He's fine. His men stopped the bad people." But Emma's relief was premature. On the monitors, she watched a new problem emerge. One of the basement interrogation rooms showed Alessandro alone with one of the captured intruders. Even through the silent security feed, she could see the violence of what was happening. She turned away, positioning herself between Dante and the monitors, not wanting him exposed to his father's dark work. "Emma," Dante said after a moment, "can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." "I can see. A little bit. Just shapes and light. It started 3 days ago. But I didn't tell Papa because I didn't want him to be sad if it went away again." Emma's breath caught. She turned to study Dante's face, watching how his eyes tracked toward light sources, how his head position had subtly changed. "Why would your Papa be sad?" "Because seeing means remembering what I saw before. When Mama—" Dante's voice trailed off. "The bad men with guns, the blood. Mama telling me to hide and be quiet. I don't want to see that again." "Oh, Dante." Emma pulled him close, her heart breaking for this brave, broken child. "The vision coming back doesn't mean you have to look at those memories. We can work through them together. Help your brain understand that seeing doesn't always mean seeing scary things. But what if the bad men come back when I can see? What if I see them hurt Papa like they hurt Mama?" The fear beneath his question was the real issue. Dante's blindness had been protection not just from the past, but from the terror of the future. His brain wouldn't fully restore his vision until he felt safe enough to witness the world again. "Your Papa is very strong," Emma said carefully, "and very smart. He won't let what happened to your Mama happen. Again. To anyone." They sat together in the safe room for 2 more hours before Alessandro finally came for them. He looked exhausted, blood on his knuckles and a darkness in his eyes that made Emma's stomach clench. "It's over," he said simply. "They're contained." "Who sent them?" Emma asked. "Anton Volkov. But not for the reasons we thought." Alessandro ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "They weren't here to kill Dante. They were here to kidnap him. Leverage to force me to give up territory and operations. They've been watching us for weeks, waiting for a moment of weakness." But they didn't account for our security improvements, Marcus added from behind Alessandro. Or for your kid's freaky hearing. No offense, little man. None taken, Dante replied solemnly. My hearing is very good. The attempted kidnapping changed everything. Alessandro went from cautious to paranoid, restricting movement in and out of the estate, vetting every single staff member again, installing security measures that bordered on excessive. Emma watched him spiral into control-seeking behavior driven by fear, and recognized the dangerous pattern. She'd seen it before in parents who'd experienced trauma, the desperate need to prevent any possible harm, even at the cost of their child's development and happiness. You're suffocating him, she told Alessandro after he'd canceled Dante's planned outdoor therapy session for the third day in a row. They were in his study, the door closed against prying ears. I'm keeping him safe. You're keeping him prisoner. Alessandro. Dante was making incredible progress. The outdoor sensory work was helping him build confidence, expand his world. Now you've got him back in his room like we're starting over. We're starting over with him alive. Alessandro's voice was cold. Final. That's all that matters. No, it's not. You're letting the Volkovs win by doing their job for them, taking away Dante's freedom, his progress, his childhood. Is this how you want him to live? In a cage? Better a cage than a coffin. The words exploded between them, Alessandro's control finally shattering completely. He turned away from her, hands braced on his desk, breathing hard. I watched Isabella die, he said, his voice raw. I was 15 minutes away when it happened. 15 minutes. If I'd been faster, if I'd anticipated the threat, if I'd done 100 things differently, she might still be alive. I can't. His voice broke. I can't make that mistake again with Dante. I won't. Emma moved to stand behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist, her cheek pressing against his back. You can't protect him from everything, Alessandro. No parent can. What you can do is give him the tools to protect himself, the strength to face danger when it comes, and the knowledge that he's loved no matter what. I'm terrified, Alessandro admitted, the confession barely audible. Every second of every day, I'm terrified of losing him, of losing you now, too. So we find a balance. Better security, yes, but not at the cost of Dante's development. Precautions, not prison. Alessandro turned in her arms, his expression haunted. What if I can't do that? What if the only way I know how to love is to control, to dominate, to eliminate threats before they materialize? Then I'll teach you another way. Emma rose on her toes to kiss him softly. That's what love is, Alessandro. Teaching each other to be better than we are alone. The breakthrough came 3 days later, during an outdoor therapy session, that Emma had finally convinced Alessandro to allow with Triple, the usual security presence. They were in the garden where Isabella had planted roses years ago, now overgrown but still beautiful. Dante was working on a texture exploration exercise, identifying plants by touch and smell. Emma guided his hands to a rose bloom, helping him feel the delicate petals without encountering thorns. Mama loved these, Dante said softly. Red ones, right? I remember they were red. How do you know they're red if you can't see them? Alessandro asked from where he stood watch nearby. I can see them. A little bit. Dante's admission was matter of fact. They're like blurry spots of color, red and green and brown. It's getting clearer every day. Alessandro looked at Emma in shock. She nodded confirmation, having suspected for days that Dante's vision was returning, but waiting for him to feel ready to share. Why didn't you tell me? Alessandro asked, moving closer to his son. Because seeing means remembering, and I wasn't ready to remember. Dante's small hands continued exploring the rose. But Emma says I can't live in the dark forever, that eventually I have to face what scares me. So I'm trying, Papa. I'm trying to be brave like you. Alessandro dropped to his knees beside his son, tears streaming openly down his face the first time Emma had ever seen him cry. You're already the bravest person I know, Piccolo. Braver than me by far. Will you tell me about Mama? Dante asked. Not about when she died, about before, about when she was alive and happy and here with us. What followed was the most healing conversation Emma had ever witnessed. Alessandro talked about Isabella, her laugh, her stubbornness, her fierce love for Dante, her dreams for their future. He painted a picture of a woman who was so much more than her tragic death, giving his son back a mother instead of just a trauma. Dante listened with rapt attention, his improving vision allowing him to watch his father's face as he spoke. Emma saw the moment something shifted in the boy's expression: understanding, acceptance, the beginning of peace. "She wanted me to be happy," Dante said when Alessandro finished. "So I should be happy, right? To honor her." "Yes, Piccolo, that's exactly right. Then I want to try to see better. All the way better. So I can see what she loved. The roses and the lake, and Papa's face, and Emma's face, and all the things that are good." The determination in his voice was absolute. Dante had made his choice to embrace the world again, whatever pain that might bring. Over the following weeks, Dante's vision continued to improve in fits and starts. Some days were better than others. Bad dreams would sometimes trigger temporary regression, but the overall trajectory was undeniable. He was healing. Emma documented every milestone. The first time Dante clearly identified colors, the day he could read large print text, the afternoon he looked directly at his father's face and said, "You look like Mama said you would," strong and sad but trying not to be. Alessandro's response had been to sweep both Dante and Emma into a fierce embrace, his shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. The Volkov threat remained, but Antonio's intelligence network had located Anton Volkov's base of operations. Alessandro was planning a preemptive strike, not revenge this time, but strategic elimination of a threat before it could strike again. "I need you to take Dante somewhere safe while this happens," he told Emma the night before the operation. "Someplace the Volkovs can't trace. Marcus has arranged a secure location in Vancouver, with round-the-clock protection." "Absolutely not." Emma's response was immediate. "You're not sending us away while you risk your life." "Emma, no. Dante has already lost his mother. He's not losing his father, too, and I'm not losing." She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "Not losing what?" Alessandro's voice was soft, dangerous. "You. I'm not losing you." Emma met his eyes directly. "I love you, Alessandro. I love Dante. I love this broken, dangerous family we've become. So if you think I'm going to sit in Vancouver while you potentially die fighting my battle too, you're insane." "Your battle? You think the Volkovs don't know about me by now? About what I mean to Dante? To you? I'm a target too, whether I run or stay. So I choose to stay." Alessandro studied her for a long moment, emotions warring across his face. Then he pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of fear and love and desperate hope. "If something happens to me," he said against her lips, "there are instructions, resources, legal guardianship papers naming you as Dante's mother in every way that matters. You take him and you run, and you give him the life Isabella and I dreamed of. Nothing is going to happen to you," Emma insisted fiercely. "You're coming back. Both of you are you and Marcus, and every single one of your men. Because Dante needs his father, and I need—" Her voice broke. "I need you." The night before the operation, the three of them had dinner together like a normal family. Dante, whose vision was now clear enough to see their faces with only slight blurriness, watched them with unusual intensity. "You're both scared," he observed with the blunt honesty of a child. "About tomorrow?" "Yes," Alessandro admitted. "But sometimes being scared means you're about to do something important. Are you going to kill people?" The question hung in the air. Emma held her breath, wondering how Alessandro would navigate this moment, the collision between the father he wanted to be and the man he actually was. "I'm going to protect our family," Alessandro said carefully. "Sometimes that means making very hard choices. Choices I hope you never have to make yourself. Because you love us. Because I love you more than anything in this world." Dante considered this, then reached across the table to take both their hands. "Mama told me something before she died. I remember it now that I can see again. She said, 'Love is what makes us fight.' I didn't understand before, but I do now." Emma's throat tightened with emotion as she watched this 7-year-old child process complex moral realities, with a wisdom beyond his years. "She was right," Alessandro said, his voice rough. "Love is what makes us fight. It's also what makes us survive." That night, after Dante was asleep, Alessandro and Emma made love with a tenderness and desperation that spoke of possible goodbye. They clung to each other like drowning people, memorizing touches and sounds and the feeling of being completely known by another person. Come back to me, Emma whispered in the darkness. Come back to us. Always, Alessandro promised. I'll always come back to you. The operation went wrong from the start. Alessandro's intelligence had been compromised. The Vancouver safe house idea had been leaked deliberately, making the Volkovs think Emma and Dante would be unprotected. Instead of finding an empty base, Alessandro's team walked into a trap. Emma watched the feeds from the command center Marcus had set up in the mansion's basement, her heart in her throat as the firefight unfolded. Alessandro's men were skilled, but the Volkovs had numbers and the advantage of preparation. We need to pull back, Marcus said into his radio, coordinating the retreat. Boss, do you copy? Pull back. It's compromised. Static. Emma's world stopped. On the screen, she watched Alessandro's team scatter under heavy fire, watched men fall, watched everything dissolve into chaos. Marcus, where is he? Her voice was surprisingly steady despite the terror flooding her system. I don't know. We lost his signal 3 minutes ago. Either his radio is damaged or don't. Emma couldn't let him finish that sentence. He's alive. He has to be alive. Upstairs. Dante was sleeping peacefully, unaware his world was potentially ending again. Emma had given him a mild sedative earlier, knowing the stress of the operation might trigger nightmares. Now she was grateful he shouldn't be awake for this. An hour passed. Then 2. Marcus coordinated extraction of the surviving team members, his face growing grimmer as each report came in without mention of Alessandro. Emma sat frozen, unable to cry, unable to think beyond the simple repetition of please, please, please running through her mind like a prayer. Then, finally, Marcus's radio crackled to life. Command, this is Marcelli. I'm alive. Wounded but mobile. I'm coming home. Emma's legs gave out. She collapsed into the nearest chair as relief and terror warred in her system. Alive. He was alive. What's your status, boss? Marcus asked, professional despite the visible relief on his face. Took a round to the shoulder. Nothing vital. But Marcus, Alessandro's voice changed, became harder. Anton Volkov is dead. His entire command structure is eliminated. The threat is over. The weight of that statement took a moment to sink in. Over. 3 years of living under siege, of constant vigilance, of fear for Dante's safety over. He's going to be okay, Marcus told Emma, ending the radio communication. The boss is too stubborn to die. Emma allowed herself one moment to break tears streaming down her face, her body shaking with the release of tension she'd been holding for weeks. Then she pulled herself together, because Alessandro was wounded and would need her strong when he got home. He arrived just as dawn was breaking, carried between 2 of his men, his shoulder wrapped in improvised bandaging, blood soaking through his shirt. But he was conscious, alert, and the first word out of his mouth was, Dante? Sleeping, safe, completely unaware anything happened. Emma moved to his side, helping guide him toward the medical room they'd prepared for exactly this scenario. You're going to be fine. It's a clean through and through, no major damage. And you? Alessandro caught her hand, his grip weak but determined. Are you okay? Now I am. She kissed his forehead, his cheek, his lips. Now that you're home. The doctor who treated Alessandro confirmed Emma's assessment painful but not life-threatening. With proper care and rest, he'd make a full recovery. Alessandro was a terrible patient, trying to get up and check on Dante within hours of being stitched up. Sit down before you tear your stitches, Emma ordered, pushing him back onto the bed with more force than strictly necessary. Dante is fine. He doesn't even know what happened yet. You can see him when you're not actively bleeding. You need to rest. Doctor's orders. You're not a doctor anymore. No, but I'm the woman who loves you, which means I get to tell you when you're being an idiot. Emma's voice softened. Alessandro, you did it. You ended the threat. Dante is safe. Now let yourself heal. Alessandro studied her for a long moment, then pulled her down beside him on the bed, his good arm wrapping around her waist. I love you, he said simply. I know the timing is terrible, and we probably should have this conversation when I'm not on pain medication. But I love you, Emma. You've given me and Dante everything. Hope, healing, a future. You've become essential to both of us. I love you, too. Emma settled against his chest, careful of his injured shoulder. Both of you, this crazy, dangerous family. They stayed like that until soft footsteps outside the door announced Dante's arrival. The boy appeared in the doorway, his improving vision allowing him to see the bandages, the blood, his father's pale face. "Papa got hurt," he said. Neither question nor statement, just observation. "I'm okay, Piccolo," Alessandro assured him. "Come here." Dante approached slowly, his eyes cataloging every detail. When he was close enough, he placed his small hand carefully on Alessandro's chest, feeling his heartbeat. "The bad men are gone," Dante said. "All the way gone. I can feel it. Everything feels lighter. You're right. They're gone. We're safe now. All of us?" Dante's gaze moved to Emma. "Emma too? She's staying?" Emma and Alessandro exchanged a look, an entire conversation happening in silence. Then Alessandro took Emma's hand, placing it over his heart alongside Dante's. "Emma is family now," he said firmly. "If she'll have us. Is that a proposal?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice light despite the emotion flooding through her. "Do you want it to be?" She thought about the journey that had brought them here, a delivery of coffee, a desperate father, a traumatized child, and an impossible connection that had grown into something unshakable. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I want it to be." Dante's smile was brilliant, his vision clear enough now to see both their faces perfectly. "So you're going to be my mama? My new mama? If you want me to be." "I want." Dante climbed carefully onto the bed, positioning himself between them. "Mama Isabella would like you, I think. She would be happy Papa found you." The three of them stayed like that, as morning light flooded through the windows, a family built from broken pieces, held together by love and determination and the refusal to let trauma define their story. Epilogue: 6 months later, Dante stood in the garden where his mother had planted roses, his vision fully restored, watching Emma and Alessandro exchange vows under an arch of red blooms. His father looked happy, truly happy, not just pretending for Dante's sake. And Emma was beautiful in a simple dress, smiling like she'd won the lottery. "Ready to give away the bride?" Marcus asked him. It was a joke. Emma had no family to walk her down the aisle except for Sophia, who stood as her maid of honor, so Dante had been given the honor of handing her the bouquet at the crucial moment. "Ready," Dante confirmed. As the ceremony concluded, and Alessandro kissed his new wife, Dante felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or just the knowledge that even when terrible things happened, good things could grow from the wreckage. "Hey, Dante," Sophia called, waving him over to where wedding photos were being taken. "Come on, they need a family shot. Family." Dante ran toward them, his father, his new mother, his expanded family of security personnel and staff, who'd become something more than employees. He threw his arms around both Alessandro and Emma, squeezing tight. "I can see everything," he announced, looking up at them with clear, bright eyes. "The roses and the lake and both of you and all of this. I can see everything now." "So can we, Piccolo," Alessandro said softly, gathering his son and wife close. "So can we." The photographer captured the moment, three people who'd found each other in darkness, finally standing in the light. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.